Get ready for some new goth music releases. Hey everyone, Cadaver Kelly here, and if you are a returning viewer, welcome back. If you're new to the channel, I'm an underground music journalist with a focus in post-punk wave, death rock, goth rock, synth pop, psychobilly, and some punk. In this video, I'm going to be going over some new goth and goth-adjacent music releases for spring of 2021. I'll be covering March, April, and May. When I say goth and goth-adjacent, I mean all of the typical goth genres, goth rock, death rock, cold wave, ethereal wave, and also some related genres like synth pop or other kinds of post-punk. All of these releases are available for digital download on Bandcamp. I will drop a link in the description to a list on my website of all the Bandcamp pages. Unfortunately, the list is too long to put in the YouTube description, so I just put that up on my website and I'll link it in the YouTube description. So without further ado, let's get into this list in chronological order, starting with March. On March 5th, English death rock band SENEX 4 released a 10-track album called Gods and Taboos. I would recommend this album to fans of the 80s band Sex Gang Children. On March 12th, Detoxi, a death rock band from Ventura, California, released a 3-track EP called In Laughter. Detoxi has quickly become one of my favorite modern death rock bands. The recent death rock coming from the west coast of the US is superb. Also on March 12th, Chicago-based shoegaze band The Burying Kind released a 5-track self-titled EP. This one features nice shoegaze guitar work. It's a little brighter than goth music, but I think goths could appreciate it. It has some 90s alternative undertones to it. On March 15th, Athens, Georgia-based death rock band Tears for the Dying released a 17-track album called Epitaph. Tears for the Dying is another one that's up there as one of my favorite modern death rock bands. Go check this album out. On March 16th, Brooklyn, New York goth darkwave band A Cloud of Ravens released a 10-track album called Another Kind of Midnight. This one is a goth album through and through. The album leans more on the dark wave or goth rock side depending on the track. If you're into that distinct 90s goth sound, you'll like this album. On March 19th, Greek darkwave band Grey Gallows released a 10-track album called Garden of Lies. This is another album that is very goth. It blends some of that classic first wave guitar stylings with second wave style goth rock vocals. On March 26th, Massachusetts-based shoegaze band Space Cadet released a 9-track album called Lion on a Leash. This one has much brighter sound to it than goth music. I would recommend this to fans of more classic, bright post-punk and shoegaze. It has somewhat of a bright indie soft rock sound to it. Also on March 26th, Kill Shelter and Antipole released a collaborative 8-track darkwave album onto Manic Depression Records. Overall, I'd call this album darkwave. Some of the tracks lean a little harder on the electronic side. Some are more of that classic goth darkwave sound. It's a really cool album, so check it out. On March 31st, London-based post-punk band Branded Human released a 10-track album called Black Water. This album kind of spans the border of goth and goth-adjacent. For those of you who were also into goth in the 2000s, I would recommend this to fans of bands like Beauty of Jamina or Arts of Erebus. On to April of 2021. I have 4 releases to cover from April 2nd. The first is a 10-track album called Old Blood from Isle of Man-based goth rock darkwave duo Mark E. Moon. If you're a fan of third wave 90s goth music, check this album out. The second is a 9-track album called Wax Mask from LA-based goth darkwave artist Qyburn. This album is slow, synthy, and brooding. Props to Qyburn for putting out a lot of consecutive releases. This is the 4th full-length album Qyburn has released in the past year and a half. The third release from April 2nd is a 10-track album from Seattle-based ethereal wave artist MØAA. The album is called Euphoric Recall, and this album somewhat reminds me of the 80s post-punk band Four Against. It has tones of post-punk, dark wave, ethereal, shoegaze, and goth. Check it out. The final release from April 2nd is a 10-track album called L'été des Corbeaux from French new wave band Order 89. I would recommend this to fans of New Order, Indochine, and Twin Tribes. On April 7th, Italian darkwave artist Chemical Waves released a 12-track album called Stories from the World Before. This album is a bit more on the electronic side. It's a really unique album that features a lot of collaborations with other artists from around the world. I would recommend this to fans of late 90s and early 2000s darkwave. If you're into bands like Switchblade Symphony, you might like this album. On April 9th, Australian goth rock band Sounds Like Winter released a 10-track album called Fight the Stairs. I really enjoyed this album. If you're into second wave goth rock and death rock, give it a listen. On April 12th, Russian darkwave artist Zagovor released an 8-track album called Dialogue. I would recommend this to fans of Eastern European cold wave and post-punk bands. If you dig artists like Molchat Doma, this might be your jam. On April 15th, Giant Waves, another Russian darkwave artist, released a 3-track EP called Pravda. This one leans a little more on the goth rock side of darkwave. The vocal styles are pretty unique for a goth album, so darkwave fans may or may not be into that, but it's only 3 tracks, so it's worth at least giving it a sample listen. On April 16th, Athens, Georgia-based wave band Vision Video released a 10-track album called Inked in Red. This album leans a little more on the synth-pop side. Vision Video has a pretty distinct sound that doesn't lean on the cookie-cutter wave formula. If you're into artists like Corinne or actors, give this album a listen. On April 24th, Oakland, California-based death rock band Cult Strange released a 4-track EP called Rites of Passage. If you're a fan of the band Play Dead or you're into 2000s death rock, you'll probably enjoy this one. On April 26th, Russian wave band Nauchnyy Sotrudnik released a 5-track EP called Bidovoy Invalid. This one is a little harder on the electronic side. If you're into Eastern European electronic music, check it out. On April 30th, German darkwave band Fixed Lens released a 6-track self-titled EP. This one is more of a post-punk based darkwave sound. It's that hallmark post-punk darkwave, but with a very modern twist. I would recommend this to fans of bands like Twin Tribes. On to May of 2021. On May 2nd, Australian darkwave artist Locust Revival released a 6-track EP called Mistakes. This has that post-punk based darkwave sound, but has some dreamy ethereal effects added into the mix. This is a really beautiful EP. You can really get lost in it. I have 3 different releases to cover from May 7th. The first is an 8-track album called Year of No Days, released by Raleigh, North Carolina-based dark post-punk band Night Battles. This one is dark sounding, but I think I'd call it more goth adjacent. It's on the harder side of post-punk. Also on the 7th, California post-punk band Cruel Reflections released an 11-track album called Through Motions. Some of this album is in English and some of it's in Spanish. This is very gothy post-punk with beautifully sinister undertones. If you're into Spanish post-punk, give this one a listen. The third release on May 7th was a 7-track album called For To Have Time Is To Have Wings from a French shoegaze band called CANDELABRE. I would recommend this album to fans of Cocteau Twins. On May 14th, Polish post-punk band Mekong released a 9-track album called End of the World. This album really captures that 80s first wave goth sound. I really love this album and would recommend this to fans of bands like Skeletal Family. Also on May 14th, St. Louis-based rock band The Cult Sounds released an 11-track album called Death of a Star. This album fuses sounds of goth rock, hard rock, metal, and a few other alternative genres. I would recommend this to fans of Children on Stun. On May 15th, New York-based death rock project 149 released a 5-track self-titled EP. I really enjoyed this release. I would recommend this to fans of Diaval Strain. On May 20th, Japanese darkwave artist NEHANN released a 10-track album called New Metropolis. If you're into 2000s death rock and goth rock, you may enjoy this one because there are hints of that style in the mix. It very much reminded me of the kind of stuff I used to listen to when I was coming of age. Also on May 20th, New York-based darkwave project Like What released a 7-track album called Avant Garde. This one has hints of 80s new wave influence in it. It was a little more on the minimal side, but not quite cold wave or minimal wave. I would recommend it to fans of New Order and Lebanon Hanover, and that may sound like an odd combo, but if you listen to it, you'll hear what I mean. On May 21st, New York-based darkwave band Hallowed Hearts released a 5-track EP called Ruins. This is a dark synth-heavy album with both some goth rock and post-punk flavoring. I would recommend this to fans of the band Hapax. If you're a fan of Pink Floyd, they have a very interesting darkwave cover of Comfortably Numb on the EP. Also on May 21st, Indonesian dark electronic band Camlann released a 10-track album called Circa 1983. The album has elements of darkwave synthpop and dark electro. It's a really cool album, so give it a listen. On May 22nd, South Carolina-based goth rock artist Orcus Nullify released a 6-track EP called Beautiful Hell. I think I'd call this EP goth rock, but it has some hints of death rock to it as well. It's a little on the harder side. If you're into third wave 90s goth rock, check it out. On May 24th, Portland-based shoegaze and post-punk band Softkill released a 9-track album called Not Quite Dracula Music. I believe this is a collection of previously recorded material that was unreleased until this. I love Softkill, so I'll listen to anything they put out. Also on May 24th, South Korean cold wave band International Badboys Inc. released an 8-track album called Enjoy Your Stay. This is a really unique album. If you're into bands like Molchat Doma, you might like the vibe of this one. It's also cool to see a Korean goth band because I don't know a lot of goth bands out of South Korea. If any viewers know others, please drop them in the comments. I have 3 releases to cover from May 28th. The first is an 8-track album called Ascension from Seattle-based goth rock band Novacula. Novacula is a new band in recent years that has gained a lot of traction in the scene, and I'm a big fan so far. This new album did not disappoint. Go get it from Bandcamp. The second release from the 28th was a 6-track EP from Italian darkwave band Hapax. The EP is called Exile, and I really enjoyed this one. I actually reviewed Hapax's last album, Monade, a few years ago on an episode of Cemetery Confessions, and I wasn't that into it, but this one was mixed a lot more craftfully, and I enjoyed it. The third release on the 28th was a 4-track EP from Minneapolis-based goth post-punk artist Tarantula Girl. This was a really unique EP. I haven't heard anything quite like it before. It's a post-punk EP, but I'd recommend it to fans of early shock death rock like Christian Death and 45 Grave. It's very raw, it has some cool effects, and it has almost a punk edge to it. And there you have it, folks, your new goth music roundup for spring of 2021. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you in my next video.